So my big topic is teams drafting. And I started off looking and researching for this topic by looking at Tua's injury, the Alabama quarterback star. His injury and how it would affect his draft stock. And then from there I went into thinking what that would mean for his NFL career. Would it end up being good for him, or would it end up being pretty bad? And as I started researching that, because that originally was going to be my subject and topic, it devolved into looking at first overall picks in drafts, and in the NFL draft. And that got me to this number and statistic that I found all on my own. Since 2000, there have been 12 first overall picks that were quarterbacks. And when you add all their playoff appearances together, and by that I mean just 1 year, they have combined for 31 playoff appearances. Now in those same years that they were drafted, so for Andrew Luck's instance, he was drafted at number 1, and that same year Russell Wilson was drafted. And so I did that for I picked 7 quarterbacks that were drafted in the same year as those number 1 overall picks. And guess what? 7 of them combined for 28 playoff appearances. You want to know who those quarterbacks were? Drew Brees, Tony Romo, although he went undrafted, Andy Dalton, Colin Kaepernick, that's a nice one for you, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. Those 7 combined for 28 playoff appearances, while those 12 first overall picks at quarterback, and I'm reading this off my phone if you're wondering, while those 12 first overall quarterbacks combined for only 31 playoff appearances. And then from there, I decided, alright, that's pretty cool, so why not look at the 2020 mock draft? And from there, I found, since 2016, 14 quarterbacks have been drafted in the first round. And based off the mock drafts for 2020, 4 more quarterbacks will be drafted in the first round, which adds up to 18 quarterbacks being drafted in the first round in the past 5 drafts, which is the most in a 5-year span in 2000. From 2000 to now, because I didn't really research past 2000. I'm being honest with you. And so that got me to the question, why are so many quarterbacks being drafted early in the first round? And I ended up thinking, alright, that's way too broad of a question. And so I started off by looking at what are the 3 different ways that quarterbacks are drafted, especially in the first round. And so that got me to my topic today, teams drafting. So I found that there are 3 different ways to draft a quarterback in the first round. The first way is to draft for the future. And there are 2 ways of doing this. So the first way is what Baker Mayfield was meant to do, and same with Jared Goff, what they were meant to be doing, and what Patrick Mahomes did, which is to develop their talents behind the scenes and learn behind a veteran quarterback sitting out. For Baker Mayfield, it was supposed to be Tyrod Taylor. For Patrick Mahomes, it ended up being Alex Smith. Lamar Jackson did the same. Daniel Jones is kind of doing the same. Lamar Jackson learned behind Joe Flacco. Daniel Jones behind, for a while, Eli Manning. Now the second way of drafting for the future is shown in Kyler Murray and Sam Darnold, which is you have a really, really young team, and what you need is now a quarterback to develop, and at the same time, you have a really young team, like I mentioned before, and so you just need that veteran presence from the free agent market to come in and help your QB out, whether it's helping them develop or with the defensive side and really boosting that whole young team together and letting the quarterback figure it out or helping them out. So that's drafting for the future. The second way is drafting for winning right now. And that's what Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson, and Josh Allen were drafted for. Everything looks good. Their defense looks good. And they were drafted at the right time. Their teams at that time just needed a good quarterback to step in and lead the team. Deshaun Watson stepped into a Texans team who the year before were being led by Brock Osweiler, yet had the best defense and only had a 9-7 record because of Brock Osweiler. And in that same year, J.J. Watt got injured for the first time, major injury, in his career. And so they brought in Deshaun Watson thinking, hey, you know what? We had Brock Osweiler as their quarterback. And then they started off with Tom Savage that year before they were like, you know what, this is horrible, we're putting in Deshaun Watson. They were looking to win now. Carson Wentz started right off the bat his freshman year in the NFL. Same with Josh Allen. He stepped in, won right away because they had the defense. They already had the pieces there. They just needed a quarterback to step in, especially with the Bills losing Tyrod Taylor in free agency to, well, at the time, the Chargers and then the Browns. Or vice versa. I'm switching up my order right now. Now, the third way of drafting, and the final way of drafting, is for need of position. Now, there is no good or correct way to draft, but there is definitely a wrong way. Just like there's a wrong way of shooting a basketball. There's a correct way, and then there's a wrong way. Actually, scratch that. My bad. There's no right or wrong way of shooting a basketball. You can shoot however you like. Actually, I'm messing that joke up. So I'm just gonna move on because I had a joke there and it was really bad. Now that I've completely messed it up. Okay, I'm missing the point. Anyways, the third one is drafting for need of position. And this is the wrong way to go. This is how you get quarterbacks like Josh Rosen and Mitchell Trubisky on your team. Josh Rosen was drafted and had absolutely nothing to work with on the Arizona Cardinals. Now he's with the Miami Dolphins and again has nothing to work with. And he's a young quarterback whose career is going to end up being completely forgotten when it's all said and done. Mitchell Trubisky was drafted number 2 overall and he's not a good quarterback at all. That's what happens when you draft for a need of filling a position. Your quarterback either sucks because he sucks, or you end up with Josh Rosen, who doesn't have the tools necessary to do anything. And that's what concerns me with this draft. With so many teams looking for a quarterback to draft, you have Cincinnati, you have Washington, Miami, Tampa Bay, Chicago, the Chargers, the Titans, Pittsburgh. Only 2 of those teams are going to draft because of their quarterback's age and thus for their future. And that's the Chargers and the Steelers. Those other 6 teams can and probably will end up drafting a quarterback for need this year. Or drafting without faith, which is what happened with Dwayne Haskins in Washington, with the Washington Redskins, where he was drafted and you heard rumors of their coach and their GM not having faith in Dwayne Haskins. So how did these teams get in this mess in the first place? How did they get in the mess of needing a quarterback to fill a position? How did they get there in the first place? So the first way is lack of patience in a result-oriented league and fan base. They try to market their team and they feel like they need to. And so in order to market your team, you need a face of that team. And that face typically is the quarterback, your franchise leader. The second way is they don't invest in team building at all. And when it comes to team building, it's kind of like fantasy football. You don't go for the quarterback first. You go for the running back, wide receiver, all those other pieces. And then you get the quarterback because the quarterback, A, does not get a whole lot of points in fantasy, and the running backs and wide receivers and tight ends and other positional players too, except now think of fantasy football with an offensive line and a defense. Even though you do have a defense in fantasy football technically, but that's as a collective unit. Think of individual pieces. So the first thing that you need in team building is a solid offensive line to protect your running back and your quarterback. Then you can get started with the defense, starting with pass rush. Because if you can keep the other team's quarterback on their feet, on their toes, it can make your bad defense that's lacking everywhere else aside from the pass rush look okay. And then from there you can start moving around. You can start going running back, quarterback, receiver, and switching it all up. And eventually getting to the quarterback spot. And you can move all those pieces around in the order that you like. You can get the offensive line, and then the offense, and then the defense. But the offensive line has to come first in order to protect your quarterback. And most of these teams that I mentioned before, those 6 teams do not have that with them at the moment. And the third way that they got into the mess in the first place is that they don't plan ahead. They take the success now without looking ahead to the future and planning ahead. The easiest team to point to that did this was the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had one good season with Blake Bortles where they went to the AFC Championship and blew a lead against the New England Patriots. They had one of the best defense, if not statistically the best defense in the NFL, but their offense was trash. Yet they kept Blake Bortles because of the success that they had, going 12-4 and getting to the AFC Championship. And then they went 5-11 that season. And by the time that they realized their problem was their quarterback and fixed the problem by bringing in Nick Foles and Gardner Minshew, Jalen Ramsey, a critical part of their defense, had wanted out. Basically, the team management in those 6 teams becomes an equivalent of a moody teenage camp counselor. A moody teenage camp counselor. Hey John, what are we doing today? I don't know. I didn't plan ahead. Now go chase each other with bugs. 1, 2, 3, I hate this team. That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. They lack the patience in order to build a solid team, a solid foundation. They don't invest in their team building, which goes along with that. And they don't plan ahead to keep that team running. The Patriots do an awesome job of this. They have tons of patience when it comes to their young guys. Not so much when it comes to their veterans, but with their young guys. They put a lot of time into developing those young talents to become better in critical parts of the offense or defense. And they plan ahead. That's why they got Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett there until they became trading pieces. Because other teams wanted them because they looked good. So, in conclusion, I say for the NFL teams out there, especially those 6 that I mentioned before, which were the Cincinnati Bengals, Washington Redskins, Miami Dolphins, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Chicago Bears, even though you guys kind of have everything already there, and the Tennessee Titans, get your squads ready. Fix your teams before you throw your rookie quarterback into the fire based off a need to fill a position. And yes, you may stumble into a gem like Patrick Mahomes early on at pick 10, or Deshaun Watson 2 picks later. But in the end, myself nor anyone else wants to see your horrible team take the field, sell hope, and continue to go nowhere.